Welcome to this Killick Explains video, and welcome to another topical one, which is basically how should company directors be paid, big topic, and why should you keep an eye on it and make sure you know the answer. Well, let's go through this first of all. I mean, how many ways are there for directors to be paid? And the answer is there are lots. So some of them will be paid a salary, most of them will be paid a bonus on top, there'll be profit related pay, there'll be shares potentially granted, options on shares, not surprisingly called share options, and there may be a raft of other incentives too. So lots of different ways, a big spectrum of ways that company directors can be paid. So let's go through some of those ways and just talk about pros and cons and why some directors are paid one way, some are paid another, some are paid a mixture. And then I want to move on to something quite topical, which is should their remuneration be linked to much broader targets than just financial ones. But let's start with, why would you not pay directors a salary and have done with it, a fixed amount? Now the pros include, if you like, the advantages of just paying everybody a salary, including the directors, whatever they may think of that idea, is it's very simple, it's visible, and it's predictable. Everybody knows what to expect. In a given year, you get X amount, provided you're still there and haven't been fired. What could be simpler? But the disadvantages, and directors will tend to express these disadvantages, include, does that take account of underperformance? So if you can just collect a salary, does that not incentivize you to work as hard as you might, is one argument. There's no link to the profitability of the business, so where's the incentive to grow profits for shareholders? And it's a sort of inflexible solution. All right, so the reality is company directors tend to have a package that may include a base salary, but it'll include lots of discretionary extra awards round the edges. Now, how are those discretionary awards decided, whether they're bonuses, extra shares, granting share options and so on? Well, it can be linked to a whole load of financial metrics potentially. So revenue or sales, that can be a target for some directors. Growing AUM, assets under management. EBIT, growing profit. So revenue, assets, profit being some big financial metrics. Then you start to get into the woollier stuff, EBITDA, that's like adjusted profit for the stuff the directors don't want to be responsible for. A cynic would say that's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. And then there are special profit numbers. I'm not a big fan of them, I've got to be honest. And that's where the directors essentially, in my view, make up a number they think they can hit. And then, what do you know, they hit it. Now, at least all of those measures, and I've been a bit cynical, basically are financial. But these days, what is increasingly happening is that people are asking for their remuneration to be linked to broader targets. And some of these people are directors, some of them are shareholders, some of them are wider stakeholders. Now, is introducing newer targets, so I'll come back to one or two of these in a moment, but ability to hit environmental, social and governance criteria, for example, is it a good idea to move away from financial to non-financial targets for a blend of the two? Well, advantages of these fluffier, non-financial targets, if you like, is it's current, it's very of the moment, it's topical, people are asking questions, are companies basically following good environmental policies, social policies, are they governed well for the benefit of all stakeholders and so on? It's very relatable. You see headlines in the press about ESG all the time. But there are some downsides to widening basically the performance targets away from financial into non-financial, and that is they can get a bit vague, they can get quite complex to measure, you get some fairly hideous matrices that are designed, they're quite tricky to benchmark, one firm against another, and it can even lead to directors arguably hedging their bets and saying, phew, well if I miss my EBIT or EBITDA related target, never mind, because I'll make my money back on the woollier targets I've been set around the edges. So, what's my view? Because it is happening. I mean, directors are having their remuneration linked to broader targets, whether you're looking at Starbucks, whether you're looking at Disney and so on. Some big companies are taking this on. So my view is successful firms must, of course, consider the interests of both shareholders and broader stakeholders, as they're called. That can be groups of employees, that can be suppliers, and so on. But I'm not sure that distinction is 100% helpful, because I would argue that if a company is successfully doing what it needs to do for shareholders, by definition, it must be doing what it needs to do for that wider community of stakeholders. But nonetheless, it is topical. For me, targets that are linked to directors' remuneration need to be SMART. Now, SMART is not a new framework, and here's where I worry about the fluffier targets. Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they achievable? Are they relevant? And are they time-based? In other words, when do you stop and say, yes, those targets have been hit? And that's where I start to worry about some of these slightly wider non-financial targets. And the other problem is that it's very difficult to compare two firms in the same sector if they're applying different types of targets. Hard enough when there's financial targets. It becomes even more difficult when there are things like ESG targets, because they need to be specific to that firm. It's largely pointless to just put a sort of blanket target across all firms in the same sector, potentially. Now, that's a big topic, and if you'd like to find out more about ESG specifically, for example, you could tap my library, killick.com/learn. And if you'd like access to any of our guides, either in hard copy or online, please do ping me an email, editor@killick.com. And the same goes, by the way, for anyone wondering what this thing is, tucked away behind those guides, it's Confidant. And again, editor@killick.com will get you the latest version of our flagship quarterly magazine, which also picks up on one or two of these issues.